So here's a fun fact. I've written 500,000 words since 2020. So in 5 years, I've written and published, which I guess is the important part. I've written and published 500,000 words. And so I thought I'd make a video sharing what I've learned in writing 500,000 words and things that I wish I'd known back then that I do now. This isn't going to be at the level of like the writing itself. So it's not going to be how do you craft dialogue or how do you do good descriptions or stuff like that. If you're interested in my take on that kind of style elements, then leave a comment down below and I'll consider making a video like that. Instead, this video is going to focus on world building, plot, and character creation. The more high-level stuff. So, let's get going. Welcome to another episode with Just-in-Time World Building with your host, Marie Mullaney. It's a lovely day, and I'm taking you for a walk in a Finnish forest quite near my house. So, I hope you enjoy it. So the first thing that I wish I had been, not that I'd known, but that I'd been more brave about, is the level of fantasy that I included. In my initial world building, I included magic, and I included some spirits, but I was very focused on making sure everything makes sense. And making sure that I didn't inadvertently end up with like some breaking magic and things that just didn't work, you know. And while I still say that a world has to be internally consistent, and I will die on that hill, I am now a lot more confident, in my ability to make sure that a world is internally consistent, but also I'm a lot more confident in readers. I think that readers of fantasy appreciate fantasy. I think they love a good fantasy. And I think that giving them a lot of what they want and what they want as fantasy is a good thing, not a bad thing. So, in short, my advice to you is do not be afraid to go balls to the wall with fantasy. Do not be afraid to put in fantastical animals, plants, magic, spirits, races, species. Go for it. Readers want fantasy. It's why they read fantasy. Otherwise, they'd read historical novels or whatever. Right? So, don't be afraid. Go wild. Go full fantasy. It's good for you. Be good for your book too. Don't believe the naysayers. So that's the first thing that I wish I'd known back then. I am working on a new project, which I'll eventually get to after I finish Sangwheel, which will be a long while, because Sangwheel's got at least another series to go. But I am working on it, and it has a much more fantastical feel to it. I've just finished developing one of the races for it, or species, I suppose I should say, since they can't crossbreed. And what they do is they write knowledge, right? So they write a book or whatever, they write their knowledge down. But through the act of writing, they absorb that knowledge into themselves. And then when they recall the knowledge, it manifests as like script basically appearing on their skin. So they're these 6-fingered creatures with like black eyes that their skin is constantly covered in like moving tattoos as they recall knowledge that they have written down. And their whole like perspective on life is how important it is to write, and why it matters what you write down, and how important it is to write the truth, because at the height of their powers, the most powerful of them can change the past, not because the past changes, but because they write down lies. And if they write down lies, those lies become truth. And I thought that was a very interesting power and a very interesting species. So that's my much more fantastical world that I'm working on for after Sangwheel. All right. So that was the first thing that I wish I'd known back then, is how much readers want fantasy. The second thing that I wish I had known then that I do now is that you should have a more diverse cast. And I don't mean in terms of like what we count as diversity here, like genders or sexuality or anything like that. I mean in terms of your world, you want a more diverse cast. So in Sangwheel Chronicles, most of my characters are nobles. I have one priest as a POV character, but the rest are all nobles, which means that all of my politics, all of my intense action is all only shown from the noble perspective, and a little bit from the priest class. But the priest is also an outsider, so I don't get to show the internals of any other class, really, except for Louis in book 1, who takes on different personas. So he takes on some peasant personas and so on. So you get a glimpse of this, but you don't get a deep dive of what the other classes, in terms of like the noble class structure in the empire, is like. And I have subsequently come to the realization that it makes for a better story if you give a deeper perspective on your world. Like if you give those different perspectives on your world. So, if I were to write Chronicles again, I would include some characters from the monks of Yarrow, maybe a peasant or two, although a peasant would be hard in the story. But, I'd include some characters from different walks of life. And that would be my advice to you as well, is try and pick characters. Goodness, look at that swamp. How am I supposed to get through there? And over there is our blue token, so, Oof, made it back to the path. Where were we? My advice to you is to include some diverse characters and to make to show your world better and to show your society better. And I've done that in Sangwheel Tales, which is the second series that I'm working on, which is set in the continent of Kisangi. So my characters there is a reluctant imperial princess, a sailor boy, a slave, and a girl from the desert who becomes a priestess. So it's a very diverse group that shows a diverse range of cultures and a diverse classes of life. Much, much more diverse than it had been in Chronicles. Character diversity, it's good for you. The next piece of advice is for self-publishers. I wish I had known when I'd started this, not just how important covers are, but how much you need the same style of covers and how much you need to plan for the size of your book. All right, your printed book. Because the problem is, you can't change print sizes once you have an ISBN. You need a new ISBN. An ISBN costs either money or, in my case, I have to print the books and give them to the National Library, and they give me an ISBN. So it's a process, you know, if you want to change the size of the book or the covers. And like, I reached the end of the books and I was like, okay, I think I should have new covers. And I had to issue new ISBNs because on marketing advice, I also changed the titles of the books from The Hidden Blade to Hidden Blade, The Ducal Heir to Ducal Heir, and so on. So I just lopped the off the title. But just removing the means I had to issue new ISBNs, which is painful. And I wish I had known all of those things about marketing the book beforehand. So there are a couple of good channels about marketing your books and self-publishing and so on. I would advise you to check them out before you self-publish. Don't follow my advice. Clearly, it's not so great. But the best decision I made was start a world building channel. But that's not for everyone, right? It does take a fair amount of work to keep a channel like this going. Speaking of which, buy the books. Helps the channel. But regardless, you're going to need some kind of marketing strategy if you're going to self-publish. Otherwise, the books are just going to get lost in the 6 million titles that are published annually. It's a huge amount of titles. You know what I mean? So, yeah. Make sure you got a strategy for your marketing. Make sure you understand how you're going to market your whole series, not just the first book. And, you know, bear in mind that while you're going to need to spend some money, you don't want to spend so much money that the books can never earn themselves back, you know? The books have to be able to actually climb the hurdle of making money back. Otherwise, what in the world are you doing it for? I mean, if you're just writing for the pleasure of writing and for the pleasure of putting the story in the world, that's one thing. That is a great way to write. But then, don't spend money on marketing. And don't spend too much money on your cover either. If you can make the cover yourself, do it yourself. Because that way, you're not under financial pressure for the books to make themselves back. So if you watched the previous episode on Tuesday on how to make your town unique and so on, you'll know that we've been following these blue and white dots since then. But I didn't walk here twice. I filmed both videos on the same day. And I published them to my members at more or less the same time. Because members of the channel get early access to videos. So everybody else gets videos when they come out as scheduled. But members get access the moment I finish with publishing them. The moment I finish with editing them. And so, if you would like to get early access to the videos, as well as worksheets that'll help you build your world, you can join the channel for as little as a cup of coffee a month, and you will get early access. There's a join button down below next to the subscribe button, which you should also hit if you haven't already. All right, and now let's get back to things I wish I'd known when I started writing. Okay, so we've spoken about character diversity and we've spoken about fantasy. But the one other thing that I wish I'd known is I wish I'd known about Dan Harmon's story circles. And that's because those story circles, right, really helped me in the planning of Sangwheel Tales to plot a more comprehensive character arc, to plot a better to plot a better flow for the character arc. It's not that my characters didn't have growth in Sangwheel Chronicles, they do, but it's that their growth arc is not as well planned as the growth arcs in Sangwheel Tales are. And that's just because of story circles. I'm just giving some runners time to get away because I don't want to accidentally catch somebody in the video and then they appear on YouTube and they didn't mean to, because this is obviously a public trail. Anyway, so story circles. Story circles is a Dan Harmon creation that's kind of roughly based on the hero's journey, right? But it's focused on the character journey. So how I use it to plan characters is I say, okay, if I'm doing a character growth arc, I go, what is the comfort zone the character starts out of? What is their current emotional state? Cool. What incites change in them? What sparks the need for change from their current comfortable, emotional, and philosophical status? Cool. Once I have that, I then say, okay, so they've now had this need sparked in them. This is what they need to become. Then they leave their comfort state. And that doesn't mean they physically journey somewhere. That means that they are no longer as comfortable with their emotional state as they were at the start. And then they go through trials and tribulations. Now here, this is where I go into each scene these days. And in each scene, I go, okay, what in this scene did the character start at? And what do they end at the end of the scene? And some scenes, the character goes forward on their journey, right? They go toward their need from their comfort zone. And some scenes, they go backward. So they go back into their comfort zone. And that is simply because characters grow like the people grow like that. We don't always go like forward in our growth arc, right? Sometimes we backslide. We do things we used to do that are still comfortable to do, even though we know those things aren't good for us. And characters do the same thing. So, some scenes, the characters go towards comfort. Some scenes, they go towards need. Right? Those are the two you establish at the top. Comfort and need. So once they've gone through their trials and tribulations and they've more or less achieved their growth, I then say, okay, what is it that puts them over the top? What is the event where their growth arc is complete, where they really make the deep realization? And then, once I know what that is, like, okay, what is the price that they pay for this change that they've made in themselves? What, look at that arrow. What did they lose because of this change? Because change doesn't come cheap, right? Maybe what you lose is your certainty in the goodness of people. Maybe what you lose is your certainty in your place of your life. Maybe what you lose is your faith. Maybe, who knows what you lose? But you're going to lose something for growth. You're going to pay in the language of the story circles. So, what did the characters pay for it? And then, when they return to the people they interacted with before and to the life that they lived before, how were they transformed? How do they act differently, right? So I try to replicate a situation that they experienced earlier on, where they were still in their comfort zone emotionally. And I show how differently they act now, because they are a changed person. And I want to show that in the way that they act. So, that's the final step of their transformation. So, I discovered the story circles quite late through reading craft books and whatnot. And so I applied it to some of the books in the last part of Sangwheel Chronicles. but I've applied it to all of Sangwell Tales. And I'm about a third of the way through the first book of Tales, and I think it is a stronger story from the perspective of the characters and their growth, right? And I think that it makes the story stronger to much more clearly and specifically and intentionally plan not just your plot, but your growth arcs, the emotional changes that your characters go through using a device like the story circles. So that I wish I discovered earlier. And then the last thing that is not really a thing that I wish I discovered earlier. It's just a note. It's a note that I think everybody should know, right? Because I've always been like this, but I figure there's a lot of people who don't publish because they're like, I'm going to edit it another time, or I'm going to, I don't know, I'm not going to write it because I don't have the right idea yet, or the world isn't perfect yet, or whatever the case may be. And the thing is, don't let perfect be the enemy of good, you know? I look at Chronicles now and I'm like, well, if I tweaked this scene, I could make this growth moment land so much better. And it's true, like I could. But does it need it? The books have good reviews. They have fair sales. They're doing okay. You know? I don't need to tweak them. I just want to because I'm a different writer, right? I'm a different writer now than I was 5 years ago. I'm a different writer at the end of the current scene that I'm working on because I've learned something in the scene. Because we learn scene by scene of our lives and of scenes that we write. And I could edit forever. I could change forever, incorporating things that I've learned into the story. But then you won't ever publish because you are forever changing. And every time that you edit a scene, you learn something new and you think, maybe I can tweak that other scene. Don't fall into that trap. So here's my advice to you. And this is how I do it these days. I write the alpha draft, I get feedback on Critique Circle for the most part. Then I take that, I incorporate it, I get a second round of feedback. Okay, that's for every scene as I write it. Then, once the book's complete, I send it off to the beta readers. I get their feedback, I incorporate it. I have an editor buddy, I send it to my editor buddy. I get his feedback, I incorporate that. Then I do a final edit as I'm recording the book for audiobooks. Because that last read aloud catches all the copying edits as well. Or at least I hope they do. They catch most of them. And then I'm done. Then I'm done. I put my pen down and I publish the book. That is enough rounds of editing, I think, to make sure that the story is solid, the characters are solid, there's no grammatical errors, and we're ready to roll. And anything more than that, you're just letting perfection stand in the way of getting your story to the world. And that's not worth it. Nothing is ever perfect. And those are the 5 things I wish I'd known when I started this process. I wish I'd known more fantasy. I wish I'd known more diversity in characters. I wish I'd known about the story circles. I wish I'd known a little bit more about marketing. And then my warning to you is don't get trapped in a world of wanting perfection. And if you enjoyed this video, hit the thumbs up button. Consider becoming a member. A huge thanks to my members of the Build It in Stone tier, Katie Kofi Mug, Tony Lamono, Lupex Lakeshire, and Epic. And if you like this video, check out my video on how to use story circles for subplots. And I will see you soon for another episode of Just-in-Time World Building. Let me know if you enjoyed the walk in the forest. Cheers.